share my screen really quickly. There we go. Can you see everything okay?
Looks like it's loading. We're getting there. There it is.
Okay, cool. So yeah, let's get into it. So yeah, starting from the beginning, I didn't I didn't have what you might think of as the typical path into the science field. I definitely got involved in the marine sciences in a roundabout sort of way, but I suppose it all sort of began in Columbus, Ohio, which is where I was born. So you can see some younger pictures of me here in my old house. So I lived in the inner city areas of Columbus, and we stayed there for a little bit until my parents split. And once that happened, my mom moved out to the countryside, which was really interesting, a really interesting place to grow up. So you can see we lived in this small place called Centerburg, which is really smack dab in the middle of Ohio, and it's a little bit north of Columbus. But it's actually a pretty cute little town. You can see it's actually, like I said, in the center. And when you come into this little town, you'll see this little sign here that says, welcome to Centerburg, the heart of Ohio. So it definitely was kind of out in the middle of nowhere. But when we moved out there, I started school. And I started about second grade. You can see this is the school that I ended up going to. There was an older version of it, but they ended up building a new school, and this is what I ended up going to. But like I said, it was a little interesting being out in the country, and it was a little awkward, especially because I was one of the only Black kids out there. But I think overall it was a good move on my mom's part, because I definitely got to experience a different side of life than a lot of normal kids. But one of the valuable things that I think I took away from living in the country was my connection to nature. So like I said, we lived very much out in the middle of nowhere. So there were like cows across the street from us. We had about 2 acres of land with a small stream that kind of split the acres in half. But there was also a giant forest behind the acres that we had. And I would often go out there and find little organisms or, little artifacts. I fancied myself an explorer in my younger mind. So this is kind of a picture of what the river and the forest behind my house would look like.
Jamil, if we were neighbors, I'd be out there in the creek playing with you too. I love that.
Yeah, it was super, super fun. Like I had a blast out there. I remember bringing home toads and snakes and stuff to the house, and we would keep them. And sometimes it would be to my mother's dismay, but whatever. But yeah, I definitely fell in love with nature while I was out there. But then after a while, we ended up moving back to the inner city parts of Columbus. And I'll kind of fast forward to high school, because I just pretty much went about my schooling after that. And right before high school, though, I ended up getting my first job at the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium, which is why I have this little picture up here. And I was so excited because I was like, yes, I'm going to be working with animals, and I'm going to be doing like zookeeper stuff. It's going to be so fun and cool. I'm going to be like with nature. But that didn't end up happening. They ended up placing me in like the food courts, which I was like, oh, okay, well, this isn't exactly what I thought. I was a little naive. So I ended up lasting there for only about 2 or 3 months. And then, that was pretty much when high school started. But I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to be a little bit more careful next time. But anyways, once I started high school, my freshman year, they had everybody do an internship. And so I decided to do my internship with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, which was super cool. I ended up meeting a lot of really awesome people, but I actually went there and I did work as an assistant archaeologist because I was kind of testing the field out. But I discovered that I didn't quite like archaeology, or at least doing archaeology in Ohio. So I sort of left that behind after my internship. But as high school sort of went along, I sort of kind of just lost my way a little bit. I started getting into other activities, trying to see what, maybe I wanted to do. For a while, once we moved back, I had been taking piano lessons. And when I got into high school a little bit more, I found out that, I can kind of sing. So I started doing like performances and stuff. I got really heavily involved in our school's theater program. And I found myself in the practice room all the time, playing the piano or singing or whatever. I was part of the choir. And it was really cool, but it was kind of my way to cope with being lost. But anyways, so once high school started coming to a close, I was really like, I have no idea what I want to do. I saw myself being in the practice room all the time. So I was like, I guess I want to go into music. So that's what I did when I started applying for colleges. I applied as a music major, which I know is definitely different from the normal trajectories that people have.
I think it's really cool though that you talk about that. And if you've been with us for the summer series and you remember Holly's career dive, she was actually into theater and musical arts as well. So it's not the most uncommon thing to hear. But Jamil, you studied an undergraduate degree at Cleveland State University and you started off as a music major. So can you tell us about how that was for you and how you decided to maybe switch that major?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, let's get into my college life. So college life was definitely where things started to get put into motion. So as you mentioned, I went to Cleveland State University. I wanted to go to Cleveland partially because I didn't want to go too far away from my hometown of Columbus. But I did want to get out of Columbus. I was set on trying to go somewhere else. So yeah, I ended up going to Cleveland. And this is the little Cleveland State emblem. But this picture up above it is a picture of the music department at Cleveland State. So you can see it's a really beautiful building. I was really happy that the campus was basically downtown, which was one of the things that I kind of wanted to get away from country life a little bit. So this was, where I went for a couple years doing my music degree. But when I got into college, or when I started, I realized I don't have any money for this. I didn't really have a plan. I had no idea how college really worked. I just kind of knew that it was the thing to do if you wanted to be more successful, if you wanted to, advance. And so I was like, okay, what am I going to do? So I ended up getting about 3 different jobs and holding 3 jobs for almost my entire college career, which I do not recommend, but you got to do what you have to sometimes. So these are just some pictures of the jobs that I held. So the first job that I ever got was as a tutor. So I tutored small kids from kindergarten all the way to high school. I also worked at a restaurant, and this is the actual picture of the restaurant that I worked in. It's called Elements, and it was across the street from campus. And then I also worked at the dorm rooms. I did kind of like the front desk. thing. And I did that at night so that way I could do homework and stuff while I was sitting there at the front desk. So once I was about halfway through my career as a music major, I discovered like, this wasn't really what I wanted to do. Like I enjoyed it, but it wasn't hitting the spot, I suppose. So I realized it was time for a change. And one of those big changes happened with this person right here. So this young lady's name is Miss Pleasant. She still is a biology teacher at CSU. So one of the things that you may be familiar with that colleges do is they make you take a bunch of general education courses. And so I decided I was going to take some bio courses because I remember really liking it in high school and stuff. But for some reason at the time, it just hadn't clicked that was like the best thing ever. So anyways, I took this course with Miss Pleasant, and it was a true eye-opener for me. So Miss Pleasant was not only an amazing teacher, but she was also a Black woman, which kind of opened my eyes to the fact that, oh, wait, like, someone like me is doing this, and they're teaching this subject, and you can see that they're really passionate about it. Like, I could do this too. But it kind of really sparked reignited the flame that I had for learning about life and nature. And so I will say, like, representation is everything, because for some reason before I hadn't even thought of it as a possibility. I just didn't think that was something that I could do. And seeing this young woman teaching bio with such passion and vigor, it was like, whoa, this is awesome. And I just remembered like how much I originally loved it. So yeah, that was kind of the big turning point for me switching. So yeah, about halfway through my music career. So I ended up just.
No, sorry. We had quite a few comments in the chat saying that when you were talking about having 3 jobs and, when you first started college, and a lot of people were sympathizing and saying like, been there. Remember those days. So you weren't alone, just to share that with you. But so Miss Pleasant sounds like an incredible woman and educator. And I know this was a huge period for you where you were like, well, maybe I'm really passionate about biology. Maybe I want to switch totally gears from music, change my entire major as a sophomore in college, which these days can be really tricky with making up all the credits. So I know you have a couple other important people here. So do you want to talk about your influential mentors during this transition and what were the most valuable lessons that they taught you?
Yeah, most definitely. So first off, I'm gonna talk about this program right here because that kind of is what led me into meeting some of these other great people. But so how I ended up finding this program was a bit interesting. So while I was kind of in between majors from transferring from a music to a bio major, I was just taking some random classes, and one day I decided to walk around and I found this really, really cool office building with glass windows, and like it was super bright and interesting looking. And so I decided to go in and I asked like, hey, what's this? What's this office? What is this office about? Or what do you guys do? And they told me that they were the McNair Scholars Program. And basically the McNair Scholars Program is a program that helps minorities in trying to get into higher education. And one of the things that they do is they'll set you up with a mentor to do scientific research. So that way you kind of have a leg in the game. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And they specifically help minorities in STEM fields. So I was like, well, this is perfect. You know, I'm going into a biology major, only minority. So one of the people that they set me up with, though, once I got into the program, was this guy right here. So this is Dr. Robert Krebs. He was an amazing teacher, probably one of the best teachers I've ever had, in a multitude of regards. But our relationship at first was a little, a little rocky, just because even though they had set me up with this awesome guy, he was a little apprehensive about taking me on, understandably so, right? Because I was a music major with no background in biology whatsoever, just coming in completely fresh and new and taking on, you know, I'm about to take on research and I'm about to take all of these like high level biology courses. And so
coming in hot with a music background in biology, and he took a chance.
Yeah, and he was like, I'm gonna take a chance on you, but you know, don't prove me wrong. And hopefully I can say that at least now I can safely say that I didn't prove him wrong, especially where I am now. But yeah, anyway, so we ended up doing some great research together. He was a big influence for me in a lot of ways, and he actually got me interested in the subject matter that I want to pursue now. But moving on to this lady down here. So this lady down here is Dr. Barbara Montney. She was also a really big influence for me because she was my Bio 200 teacher, which Bio 200 was pretty much the weed out course for beginning biology majors. So I was super nervous about this class. I was like, oh man, like I don't know if I'm, you know, this is my first bio class. I'm gonna have to do well, which I did. I ended up getting more than 100% in the class, but that was partially due to this lady. And there's another woman that also taught the same class at the same time. I couldn't find a picture of her, but her name's Dr. Corbett, but both of them together were phenomenal teachers. And they taught me so much, and they basically encouraged me to keep going, even though, you know, I was new at bio. Because I would always sit in the front and ask loads and loads of questions, especially when, you know, everybody else in the class was just kind of quiet. I would be like, so what is this about? And what is that about? And they really loved me and I loved them. So it was great to meet them, and they definitely pushed me along further in the field. And then there's also this guy right here. This guy's Dr. Aaron Severson. He was my genetics professor. I didn't get to know him until a little bit later in my biology career trajectory, but he definitely influenced me to keep going, and actually he helped me get some of the cool scholarships that I have now. He really honed in on some of my skills and was like, you can do better, like you can do this, you can do this. He just kind of kept prodding me, which I think everybody needs once in a while. Healthy dosage of just pushing. And he definitely was that person for me. So he's on here as well. And then I also have this little emblem of the Greater Cleveland Aquarium up here. So I know some of them are tuning in right now, so I wanted to give them a little shout out. Just because they were also really influential in kind of my big change. So this was one of the jobs that I ended up getting kind of halfway through. I ended up having, at the maximum, I had 5 jobs while I was in college, which is ridiculous now. But this was one of the jobs that I ended up changing to and having, and they were a really big influence, especially in terms of scuba diving, which I'll talk about a little bit later.
So Jamil, before you move on, we do have a few questions in the Q&A, and thank you to everyone who's been using the Q&A to ask your questions of Jamil. You're free to do so throughout the entire webinar, and we'll get to them sort of as they're applicable. But An anonymous attendee had a really good question for you. And it can be hard being a liberal arts major transferring into a STEM field. In their university, there was a pretty big division among the staff and the students. And did you ever feel ostracized because of your background in liberal arts? I think that's a really great question, and it talks a lot about the community. And if you want to share your experience, I think it would be really valuable.
Most definitely. There were definitely some times that I, yes, felt ostracized in a lot of ways, because I had a lot of people coming up to me saying like, oh, like you're switching majors to biology. Don't you know biology is hard? And I was like, so like, you don't think I can, what does that mean? Like, and, you know, in the liberal arts world, you know, there were a lot of people that were like, you know, why are you leaving us? So there was a lot of pressure from both sides. You know, a lot of people in the bio world that were like, you know, who are you and where are you coming from? And why are you doing this? You know, of all things, what made you just switch all of a sudden? And then from the liberal arts perspective, it was like, why are you leaving? Like, what are you doing? You've been doing this for like 2.5 years. Like, you're throwing money away and that sort of thing. But you know, when you know in your heart that this is the right path that you want to take, nobody can say like nobody can tell you wrong. So it was definitely a hard pill to swallow, you know, changing majors. But if you know it's the right thing to do, then just go for it and do it.
Sometimes you just have to take that big jump and trust that you're gonna, you know, you're doing what's right for you. That leads us to another good question from Michelle. So, and this is a question that you and I had actually talked about before, but Michelle says, it seems like you had some really great things come out of just walking around and asking questions, going into new places that seemed interesting to you. And can you share any thoughts on like what compels you into that kind of curiosity and how this sort of led to those experiences for you?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that happened in my earlier childhood, kind of like walking around the forest and stuff, definitely contribute to my exploratory nature. Because I'll talk about some more how I do some more exploring, because I've always had kind of a deep desire to just discover my surroundings and go out and look for things and ask questions and see, you know, what's going on here? What is this about? So yeah, walking around like the school and stuff, it's a very big campus, and it's in the middle of downtown. So it was always like, you know, I've never been on this side of the school before. Like, let me just walk around and explore what this side of campus has to offer. And I found a couple nooks and crannies, and by the time I ended up graduating, I knew the layout of the whole school and all the like little hideout spots. So it was pretty cool. But you know, I really love that about myself, that I have that adventurous spirit. And so, you know, I hope that continues. But yeah, it was definitely.
I said it can be so hard just like taking a different path when you like know the quickest way to get from like one lecture to the next, or you have like a favorite pathway or whatever, but just try like a new path and explore the university and walk in places and ask questions, and you'd be surprised how many people will be willing to help you.
Yeah, you never know what you may find. I ended up finding a lot of cool programs almost towards the end of my college days. So I was like, dang it, I could have been doing this and this and this. So I ended up getting a lot of really cool scholarships later on in my college years, just because before I had no idea about them. And then I, you know, just decided to explore around and see what could shake. And I found a whole bunch of things that, you know, eventually helped me out. So.
Well, Jamil, we have one more question, and we have a bunch of other questions that we'll get to as we keep moving forward. And please feel free to continue asking your questions in the Q&A. If we didn't get to them just now, it's because we're saving them for later on. But please feel free to continue asking your questions in the Q&A. But Ash wants to know, And I think this is a good segue into the next thing that we're going to talk about today, because we're almost at our halfway, well, a little over our halfway point. But Ash said, thanks for sharing your career decision with us. What exactly did you study during your research and what was your focus?
Yes, so that is a perfect segue because I am about to get into that.
Thanks, Ash.
So yeah, let's discover what I researched. So I did two undergraduate research experiences. So this is the first one that I did right here. As a poster board, it's an early draft, so it's not completely. I just put an early draft in there of my first poster board. But I ended up working with Dr. Krebs on mussels, freshwater mussels. So we went out to the Rocky River and we basically surveyed the area and we're looking for changes in mussel density, their population densities that had changed over a 15-year span of time, just to see like, you know, if populations had increased or decreased, or if, you know, they were looking sick, or if they were looking older or younger, or, you know, basically just, like I said, a survey. And it was definitely, it was definitely a blast doing this research, especially with Dr. Krebs. I love wading through like the Rocky River, going out in the field and then coming back to the lab and looking at some of the different samples and stuff. So in this picture right over here, you can see me in the lab, and there are some of the older specimens that we had collected from years ago. And I was just measuring them out and, you know, documenting what species they were. But yeah, it was a super great experience that I ended up falling in love, especially with field work. But it was a super great experience going out and finding these cool invertebrates. Like I said, Dr. Krebs was the one that kind of got me interested in the subject matter that I want to pursue now. And that started with this. So I learned so much about how to do research and how to put things together, how to, you know, bring data together and document it. So then the second research experience that I had was also sort of segued through Dr. Krebs. But I ended up doing a REU, which for those of you that don't know, is a research experience for undergraduates. And I did that through the NSF, the National Science Foundation. But I was really lucky because I had Dr. Krebs to encourage me to go for an REU through NSF. So I ended up applying to about 4 and I got into 2. And I actually had a really rough decision because I got into one in Hawaii and one in Puerto Rico. And so I was like, oh my gosh, these are 2 awesome. I think the one in Hawaii had to do with Drosophila, but I ended up obviously picking the REU in Puerto Rico, where I worked with a cool guy named Josue Santiago. And we basically were looking at hurricane effects on male fauna populations and how it affected their like abundance and composition and whatnot. And so I definitely had a blast doing this as well, especially going and staying out in Puerto Rico for the good parts of an entire summer. But you can see there's some pictures here. This is the University of Puerto Rico, which is where I was doing my research through. And then here's a picture of me out in the field, you know, collecting samples and being silly. But yeah, I ended up doing this research and we found actually some pretty significant results. But it was so much fun and I learned so much, especially in terms of stats, because I'm not good at stats. I'm admitting that now. I'm not good at stats. I am working on it, but I definitely got thrown into the fire here with like some stat stuff. I was like, oh man, okay, I gotta get this together. I also learned a lot more about like conducting research, especially conducting your own experiment, which is what we did. You can kind of see some little pictures here of the experiment that we ended up putting together for this project. But I got to use the microscope more and look at super cool invertebrates, really microscopic ones, of course. And you can see this poster is a little bit more put together than the other one. So from my last research project, I got some more experience putting things all together as well. So it was an awesome time. I would definitely suggest, if you get a chance to do any sort of research thing, do an RU, and go out of your comfort zone, go somewhere you've never been before, and you'll meet all sorts of great, amazing people, and they'll really put your skills to the test and build you up as a better researcher, for those that are interested in going into research and stuff.
So that's a good segue. We have two more questions. You talked about a lot of your really cool research and getting to do some traveling and do these projects. Xavier wants to know, what is your favorite marine animal?
What is my favorite marine animal? Without a doubt, my favorite marine animal is the giant Pacific octopus, which is actually what I would like to do some research on one day. They are the coolest creatures in the entire world. They're pretty much like aliens on Earth, if you think about it, because they can fit through anything that's about the size of a quarter. They've got, all these really weird arms that think for themselves. Each arm has like neurons that allows it to basically have its own brain. They can change color into anything, change texture. And on top of that, they're almost colorblind. So it's like, how the heck do you do this? So I find them really, really fascinating on a multitude of levels. So yeah, that would be my favorite marine animal by far.
I think octopus are probably like one of the coolest, in my opinion, as well. They're so intelligent, and they are like really good at, figuring out answers to riddles and puzzles and things. We have another really good question. Were you ever hesitant about asking questions, like introducing yourself to total strangers? And do you have any advice for others who feel like they want to do the same thing, but are like kind of fearful of being vulnerable?
Yes, I definitely have some stage fright. So, so talking to people and stuff, I've heard that I'm decent at it, that I'm pretty amicable and nice to talk to, but there's still some reservation within that's like, oh no, I don't want to sound stupid, like I don't want to ask too many questions and be too annoying. But I would suggest just going for it and just doing it, just ramping up the courage to just ask the questions that you need asked, because that in the long run is going to do more than staying silent. By a long shot, definitely just go forth and ask your questions and become more informed. It's really important to, one, being a scientist, and two, just life in general, kind of getting along with whatever you want to do. You want to know the answers to things that you need to know about. So I definitely struggled a little bit with trying to talk to people and ask questions, and like I said, not be too funny, but I ended up just swallowing that fear and going forth and just being like, hey, what's this? Did I do this wrong? And you'll get a lot of criticism, but you also have to take the criticism with a grain of salt, because it will really make you better in every way. So
I think sometimes too, we feel like when we feel anxious or afraid, we get like that pit in in our stomach that's like, ooh, you're afraid. But I think sometimes that's actually excitement, and we kind of misinterpret. It's hard to like, is this making me anxious? Is this making me afraid? Or is this excitement? Am I excited? And so like, sometimes I think to myself, oh, I'm just excited. I'm not nervous. I'm just excited. And it helps me kind of like rationalize that, even doing career dive with you guys today, I always get like a little bit like, ooh, butterfly tummy kind of thing. But I tell myself, I'm excited to share the career of our professional. And I think that helps me like get over that initial like, ooh, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely good to sometimes play mind tricks on yourself. Like when I was in theater, one of the things that I had to do was I had to take off my glasses so that I couldn't see anybody. Um, because while I was on stage, I was like, oh crap, like there's so many eyes on me, and like I had to remember these lines, but I was just like, okay, let me take these glasses off so I don't have to see anybody's specific face like just staring at me. And that helped a lot. So yeah, it's definitely appropriate to do some mind tricks on yourself if you get nervous about things. I'm nervous about this right now.
Well, you're doing great so far. But Jamil, I imagine our viewers are very curious to know how you transitioned to all the research that you did and completing your degree to working with us at the Smithsonian. So can you tell us about that part of your journey?
Yeah, of course. So really quickly, I'm going to talk about some of the experiences that I had that kind of led me to where I'm at now. So I did have a whole bunch of conferences while I was in college. I went to a whole bunch of different places. Some of them talking about my research, and some like, just kind of pitching it. But some of these were also through the McNair Scholarship program, and others were through my own volition. But I ended up going to a lot of these places, and it helped me out with public speaking and making lots of connections and stuff. So you can see some of the universities that I went to here, but let's get into, my time after college and how I sort of got slowly to the Smithsonian. So after I graduated college, I was like, okay, I've been working all these jobs and like doing all this research and stuff and doing all this work. And so I wanted to take a year to just kind of do my own thing and travel around and have fun, but also try and like get some stuff done along the way. So I ended up traveling I graduated in 2018, and then I started traveling at the beginning of 2019. And I ended up going, surprisingly, I ended up going to about 7 countries and 6 US cities. And you can see some of the places I went here are, you can kind of tell. But this one was in like the Dominican Republic, this was in Guatemala, and this was in Istanbul. But yeah, I definitely was like, okay, I need to get out of here and go some places. So I did that for a little while. And I also started getting into scuba diving. So this is where kind of the aquarium comes in, why I mentioned it before. So while I was working there, we have divers that go into the exhibits and stuff in the water pretty much every day. And so now that I was out of school, I was like, hey, I'm kind of interested in this. This will really help on my career path for one. And then two, it's a really, really awesome like recreational activity. And I also don't see a whole bunch of people like me in this sort of thing. So I was like, I definitely would like to get into this more. So I ended up starting scuba classes and stuff in 2019, and I ended up, before the year ended, I ended up with my rescue diver certification. And now this year I actually have my dry suit certification. But yeah, that's just a little background on how I slowly got towards this year. So as I'm sure we're all aware, this year has definitely been a little bit different in a multitude of ways. But at the beginning of this year, I got some really cool things going for me. So a little bit in 2019, while I was traveling around, I was also preparing to go into the Peace Corps, because I decided that I wanted to go to a different country and experience culture there and really like get acclimated to somewhere else. I just wanted to get out and explore even more. So I was preparing to go into the Peace Corps. And while I was kind of doing some scuba diving stuff, I got introduced to this scholarship right here. It's the Our World Underwater Scholarship Society, or Rolex Scholarship. And, you know, somebody told me about it and I was like, okay, you know, I'll look into this and see what it's about. And I ended up applying, and it's a really prestigious scholarship because I wasn't sure about like how, you know, I wasn't sure if I was gonna really get it. But I ended up somehow winning, which was really, I was really gobsmacked at that, just because they only picked like one person out of all of North America. They had like 3 sections: North America, Europe, and then Australasia. And I interviewed and everything, and I turned in all of my paperwork and essays and stuff. And they were like, yeah, you were the best candidate by far. And I was like, what? Wow. So I was definitely overwhelmed with joy that I had gotten that. And this is also where one of my mentors comes in, because he definitely pushed me a lot to, you know, hone my skills so that I could get this scholarship. I kept sending him essays like, how does this look? And he was like, this is good, but you can do better. I've seen you do better. So thank you, Dr. Severson. But obviously things didn't go completely as planned because COVID, yay. So COVID kind of stopped everything in its tracks, as I'm sure you're all aware. So the scholarship was deferred. So I'll be taking part in it next year, you know, hopefully. But it kind of left me in a tizzy because I was like, holy crap, like I had this whole year ready to do something, and now there's nothing. Like I was kind of scrambling to find something to do. And so I was kind of reaching out like, hey, you know, are there any opportunities? What can I do? I started applying for stuff left and right. And thanks to some folks in the Scholarship Society, they were able to connect me to the Smithsonian, specifically to Valerie Paul. And she, you know, saw me and was like, yeah, you know, why don't you come down and take a look, and, you know, we'll show you everything and stuff, and you can choose to do an internship here if you want. And I was like, yes, this is great. So I looked around. I came down to Fort Pierce, Florida for a little bit, because partially I was down there visiting my sister. But I got to see the grounds and everything. And I decided to do the virtual internship, just because COVID was kind of rampant down in Florida at the time. And so I wanted to be on the safe side. So I ended up doing, like I said, the virtual internship with you guys. And I guess sort of the rest is history. But so now I'm like working with Laura and Aaron and Valerie and Bill, basically coming up with like education plans and stuff and drafts on that. And I've been having a super blast doing this, because I definitely hope to be able to reach out to a lot of young folks, especially minority folks, just kind of show my face a little bit more, so we can get the word out there of, you know, sciences, marine sciences specifically. So yeah, I know it was a long story to get to the Smithsonian, but that's how it happened.
Okay, we enjoy hearing about your journey, and I know that our listeners did too. I do want to just mention though, because we are coming up on our time. So if you're joining us, if you're listening in today and you do have to run, but you want to catch the end, because we do have some more good questions that I want to get to. Jamil, if you have time to answer a few more.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, if you have to leave us, make sure you check back on our YouTube channel, because I will put this recording up by the end of today. It is also live on Facebook, so you can check there if you missed the end and you want to catch the last couple questions. But are you ready to take some questions, Jamil?
Bring them on. Let's go.
Before we get into that, though, I will say we're super happy to have you here with us at the Smithsonian, especially because we haven't ever had virtual interns before. So this is a first for us. And you are our digital programming virtual intern, which is a really cool opportunity for us. And I hope it is for you as well. And like I said, we're really excited to have you here with us and to create all this really cool educational stuff we've got coming out.
Well, thank you. Oh, I feel so special.
You are special. Okay, so a couple more questions. So I know we kind of had to skip over your conferences experience, but is there maybe one or two lessons that you learned from all the conferences that you attended, and what are like some of the skills that you took away from that?
Yeah, like I said, I definitely learned to network better. I definitely learned how to talk to people. I ended up talking to this one lady from Princeton, and from basically from people all over the place, seeing different research projects and asking them about it. So I definitely learned to network, and I also learned how to be a little bit less nervous in front of people, because when I had to present my own research, I was like, oh my God, what if somebody asks me something really hard and I don't know the answer? So I definitely got a lot of experience in that regard, like answering questions, being more open to, people coming up and just being like, okay, tell me about what you did. Tell me about the stuff that you've been researching. Tell me about, everything that went into this. And so I I learned a lot from just those experiences. Of course, I had some bad ones. Not, I shouldn't say bad, but I had some rough ones, I should say, where I was just like trying to get acclimated into a setting where it's like I'm doing a lot of the talking. But it was definitely an experience that if you can, I would definitely recommend, because it gets you out there. It got me to travel a little bit as well. And it allowed me to be a little bit more amicable when talking to folks. So yeah, those are basically some of the experiences that I gained from doing a lot of those conferences.
Cool. Sharmel wants to know what are some of marine animals you've seen underwater?
Oh, okay.
So
I have seen top 3 favorite. Okay, well, for a long time, I didn't get to see a sea turtle. And I was like, where the heck, like, yeah, it was like, we would be diving somewhere and there would be a sea turtle, but somehow I would miss it. Some other people would see it, but I would miss it. I was like, what the heck? And so on my most recent dive, which was, I think, no, not my most recent dive, my most recent oceanic dive, I should say, because I've been doing some diving here at the quarry. There's no sea turtles there, unfortunately. But my most recent dive, oceanic dive in Honduras, I got to see 2 sea turtles at the same time. I was like, yes, woo! So I got to be like, check, sea turtles. One of the other cool things that I kind of got to see was a whale shark. So I ended up going to the Red Sea in Egypt with NABS, which is the National Association of Black Divers, or Black Scuba Divers. And we went to Egypt for a summit, and there was a whale shark way, way, way in the distance. And so I got to see a little bit of it. I was like, oh my God, this is super cool. There were other people that got to see like the whale shark super up close, and I was jealous. But I still posted a picture of the whale shark up close.
They swim so fast. I've seen one as well in the Maldives, and they are there on the surface for like a second, and then they just they're gone. So you have to be like either in the right place at the right time, or really lucky to get like a nice picture. But definitely important not to get too close to them, because they are usually feeding on the surface after a long dive. So giving them some space is always good.
Yeah. I think there was, for a third animal, I think honestly some of the coolest animals that I've seen are like crabs, the like giant crabs that you see under the water. Like they're so cool because they're just kind of hidden there. But you know, once you spot them, you can't miss them. Like they're huge. They're just ginormous. And they're almost a little intimidating too. You know, I have seen some sharks and stuff, but I see sharks all the time at the aquarium. But the giant sea crabs were super cool, especially at night doing a night dive. Like I was like, whoa, this is amazing. So yeah, those I would say would be my three that I was excited the most about seeing.
Cool.
I still haven't seen an octopus yet, so it's on my list.
Well, we'll take, we're going to kind of combine these two questions into one because they're quite similar. So Robin and Maya, thank you for your questions. And the gist of them both together is, when can you start your Rolex Scholarship? And what are some of the things that you're hoping to do during that year?
Yes, I meant to explain about the scholarship a little bit more. But hopefully I will get to start the scholarship next June. So that's when that's predicted to start. It was obviously supposed to start this June, but for obvious reasons, it was deferred. But yes, let me talk about the scholarship a little bit. So the Rolex Scholarship is basically, it allows you to travel wherever, to explore different careers in scuba diving. So if you're interested in doing underwater photography or underwater conservation or tourism or research, basically anything that you can dream of concerning, you know, doing stuff with scuba diving, they will allow you to kind of explore that, or they'll give you funding to like look into it, get some experience with it. Some of the past scholars that they've had, like I've seen some of the stuff that they've done, and I was just like, whoa, amazing. Some of them have, you know, chartered boats to Antarctica and like done like really, really extensive research projects, or have done like, you know, won photography awards, and a lot of them have gone on to do some pretty amazing things. So I'm really excited about having the scholarship. But yeah, one of the things that I definitely want to focus on during my scholarship year specifically is research is one. Another thing is conservation. I'd also like to get into some photography as well and some more technical diving. But I'd like to get into some education as well. One of my future goals is to basically, you know, just pass it forward and give back. Like I said, especially to minority communities that, you know, who might have been like me, like never thought that this sort of career was an option, never even gave it a chance because it just seems so abstract and so out there. So that's definitely one of the things that I hope to take away from the scholarship, and that I'll be able to give back.
That's super cool. And I'm blessed to know 2 Rolex scholars, and you're one of them. So thanks for being my friend. But with that,
No problem.
I think we're going to have to wrap things up because we're getting on the 1 o'clock hour. But thank you guys so much for asking your questions. If you asked a question and we didn't get to it, please feel free to follow up with us at our email address. And it's in the chat, but it's smseducation@si.edu in case you're joining us on Facebook, or you can reach out to us on Facebook as well. But Jamil, thanks so much for sharing your career path with us. And we really appreciate it. You're welcome, of course. Do you want to leave everyone with like one last nugget of advice about your journey and, you know, how, like, something you wish somebody told you when you were younger?
Yeah, so
this is only for the people who stayed all the way till the end.
They get this premier nugget of advice. One of the things that I would say is do not give up. Do not give up. I had so many naysayers, and yet, you know, here I am. I'm hoping to get even further. But just do not give up on yourself. Don't give up on what you're passionate about, especially, you know, if it's something that you fear. One of the things I always say is the things that you fear tend to be the things that are the most worthwhile. And I will live and die by that. Because all of the things that I've done, I have been afraid of at some point. And I just decided to just go for it and just be like, okay, well, you know what, even though I might not know completely 100% what I'm doing, I'm going to do it now. I'm just going to go for it and make it happen. And I have not regretted a single time that I've done that. So
just go for it.
Just go for it and keep going. Don't stop for anybody.
All right. Well, Jamil, thank you so much for your time today. And thank you to everyone watching and joining us. If you enjoyed this program, please join us again on November 19th. We're going to be interviewing Iris Segura Garcia, a marine ecologist at the Smithsonian Marine Station. One of my personal favorites. Her research is really, really neat. So I hope you can join us then. You can find the registration links for our live streams on our Facebook page, and we put them for you in the chat. So make sure that you join us back for that one. It's going to be again at noon on a Thursday on November 19th. We share the links every Monday on our Facebook page, but just in case you don't check there, make sure that you're getting the link from our chat. And if, like I said before, if you didn't get your question answered and you'd like an answer, please feel free to email us at smseducation@si.edu. Make sure you check out our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, our Instagram, and our Twitter. If you're a social media junkie, we have a lot of really cool content there for you and educational stuff. You'll see more of Jamil on those platforms as well in the future. So make sure you join us for those. Okay, my friends, without further ado, we'll see you next time.